Hi, I'm Alisa, a therapist here at Octave. Today I want to talk about something I see a lot as a family therapist, which is parental guilt. If you've ever wondered, did I cause this or am I failing my child? You're not alone. Parenting guilt is incredibly common, especially when a child is struggling with anxiety, depression, behavioral challenges, or starts therapy. I want to talk about why parenting guilt happens and figure out together how to start letting some of that weight go. Parents are wired to protect their children. When something feels wrong, your brain immediately looks for a cause. And because you're the person who loves your child most, it's easy to land on yourself. We also live in a culture that places enormous pressure on parents. It can feel like everyone is getting parenting right. The reality, no parents get everything right. One of the biggest myths parents carry is that there is one right way to parent. There isn't. Every parent makes mistakes. When meeting with parents, I often see that they blame themselves first because they feel this immense responsibility for their child's development. And so usually when there's a challenge with their child, some of the systems that we're a part of immediately point to us as parents and questioning, what are we doing? How are we raising our child? So we get messages, of course, externally, but then also this internal pressure and feeling of, I want my child to succeed. I don't want them to have any adverse experiences. And so this immense pressure to feel like I need to perform for them and to give them the best experience possible. Guilt is something that can definitely interfere with parenting. We can see that somewhat on a spectrum. And so we can see a little bit of it. Maybe at times it's often giving into something that we wouldn't have given into previously, being a little bit looser with our boundaries and structure. And we can also see it more on a heavier end of potentially engaging in some guilty parenting, I like to call it, or I like to say, when our guilt is driving how we connect and how we like to show up for our child. Parenting guilt can show up and look different in a few different ways. So it can look like potentially having some tighter constraints maybe around our child who's trying to seek more independence. It can also look like us maybe engaging in a little bit more indulgence with our child. So kind of forgetting that bedtime on a more consistent basis and saying they can stay up later. Maybe it's giving into treats or potentially buying things, especially if that's the way that we like to show love and affection. Parenting guilt can also look very similar to burnout. So it can look like that disconnect from our child. It can also look like that negative self-talk for us of constantly feeling like I can't get something right. It can also look like, when you think about it, and when you're talking about your child maybe with someone else, it can look like really focusing on some of their more challenging attributes. So when you go to talk about, hi, my son does X, Y, and Z, and with having difficulty in seeing those positive moments, then maybe we're experiencing a little bit of parental guilt. Interrupting negative self-talk when it comes up in the moment is something that can be really beneficial for parents, especially at like a starter step of wanting to potentially work through some of the parental guilt that you might experience. And so that can look like taking a pause for a second and potentially assessing, where is this thought coming from? And something that is a CBT technique is putting your thoughts on trial. It's something that I encourage clients to do, as well as something that I do for myself, and saying, is there evidence to support this negative thought that I have? Like, is there evidence to support that I'm not showing up for my child, I'm not doing my best? Most of the times you're going to recognize there actually isn't evidence to support it when you take the time to step back and to assess where that thought is really coming from and what it means. Oftentimes when parents neglect potentially their needs or neglect potentially taking care of themselves, that can impact their children and how they show up for them in parenting. And so maybe this can look like even a hypervigilance around their children, maybe their children's identity, their children's involvement with their friends and their different social supports. Because instead of wanting to look inward and potentially to have some of that self-compassion or to work through some things themselves, they're potentially projecting all of that attention onto their child. Most clients that I have the opportunity to sit with and support that are parents experience some form of parental guilt. Of course, it can be on different levels, related to different things, but it's something that's going to come up. And so I can speak to a client experience where that parent had recently lost their job. They ended up staying at home with their child and being the child's main caregiver, which they loved that experience and being able to be there the first year of their child's life, being able to take care of them and get to know them and have those experiences. But they then started to feel this guilt and also some shame around what does that mean for them and their identity. It's then talking and exploring where is that guilt coming from? Is the guilt coming from a place of feeling like we aren't providing a certain specific thing to our child? Is the guilt coming from expectations set by someone else as to what parenting should look like? Or maybe we just need to work on setting what we think expectations should look like as a parent. What does it mean to show up for our child? Where maybe are we able to lean in on our community or to build those supports that we need to feel like our child is getting what they need, and then I can also get what I need as a parent as well. It is very common for parents to apologize in the first session, either for feeling potentially this sense of judgment or this sense of shame that they've come to therapy to talk about challenges with their child. This feeling of I should have this figured out, why do I need external support, and trying to figure out how to support my child. And then also apologizing even for taking up space oftentimes as well too. One of the most healing moments in therapy can be when parents realize they don't have to be perfect. They just have to keep showing up. Parents sometimes tell me they don't have time for therapy because all of their energy goes toward their children. Ironically, supporting the parent often becomes one of the best ways to support the child. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your child is also take care of yourself. Asking for help doesn't mean you've failed. One of the bravest things a parent can do is simply raise their hand and say, I don't have all the answers and I'm willing to get support. It is okay if you're experiencing or feeling parenting guilt. It is a part of the process. It's really a part of the experience. And the fact that you are here and wanting to learn more and potentially considering talking to a therapist is a great first step to figuring out how you can potentially maneuver what parenting guilt looks like for you. Guilt is a feeling that's okay to experience. What's important after is that we learn, how is that guilt potentially going to impact our actions? Or how is that guilt going to impact how we show up for our children? If you're carrying around parenting guilt today, I hope you'll remember this. Your child doesn't need a perfect parent. They need a parent who's willing to learn, repair, grow, and keep showing up. Thank you so much for sitting with me. If watching this video brought up any thoughts or ideas about other topics you'd like to hear from us, please feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'll see you next time.